what would the average customer of Orchard Software say to this sort of a proposal? Would they look on this with favor, with horror? Would it be a mixed reaction of?
It started out as horror.
Okay.
And it's slowly moving towards, I don't know if I'd go all the way to favorable.
Okay.
We'd settle for tolerable first.
I understand.
And then move to favorable. When you first bring it up, the idea of having just putting in your symptoms and having the laboratory, it was met with hair standing up and a real tense pullback. There's no question. Mm-hmm. It is moving in a much more favorable direction. It's not there.
Of course.
But we're going in the right direction.
Right. I mean, this is a big sea change, let's face it. I mean, Kurt, you and I are veterans of the laboratory business as individuals. We spend most of our career hearing the laboratory should work like a factory. In other words, it should be a very efficient, almost brainless engineering process of something in, something out, the least cost, the least personnel involvement. And so this is a sea change for lots of folks, not the least of which is ourselves, I'm sure.
Correct. Yes, we always make the joke, you want to get a med tech really riled up, just explain to them, anyone can run a test, you just have to know where the start button is. It's always missed the process of the lab is not there as a factory to create widgets or tests. It's there to create information and useful information to change healthcare. Unless you understand that last part, you're looking at the laboratory wrong. Now, because we were in the fee-for-service market for so long, and the labs proliferated for revenue purposes,
of course,
it was easy to see that. We're in the same sea change. That's where I believe the laboratory will have to elevate itself much more into the continuum of care. It's just not going to be an easy process because we're only 3% of the spend, because we've had that attitude for so long of either a black box or in the basement. To try and get a seat at the table and learn to speak languages that are completely foreign to us, it's going to be a big change.
So I think it's important even in the U.S., if you go back to the early days of lab medicine, the pathologist, clinical or AP, was a consultant, very involved in what got ordered and what tests were going to be used to make a diagnosis. And then we started paying for tests, regardless of their value to the diagnosis. And then we automated testing volume. And pretty soon it became a business unto itself. So we don't even have to go to another country. We have to go back to how did this used to work in terms of bringing pathologist intellect to the table, and how do we reincorporate that into decision making?
It's true. And I can say after a generation and a half, how do we reintroduce the clinical pathologist as a very vital man or woman into this process?
Right.
Because when I think of ClinLab 2.0 and I think of all the exciting projects in this line at places like Tricor and Northwell and through Mike LaPosada and his alkalites, they've come up very frankly against a great shortage of people that can do this kind of work effectively. And I don't think this is a place where systems are really going to want to stumble around while people get it together. They're much, much too busy.
Right.
They need as Jim Crawford goes, kind of an industrialized version of this, a systematized version of this kind of help from their laboratory. It can't be simply a one-off.
Right, but as Matt explained, and if you think about it, as long as we've been in the industry, clinical pathologists really started going out of the lab in the mid-1980s. And by 1990, you couldn't find one. So we've lived 2.5 generations without a clinical pathologist. Now we need them again. And they're not going to be there. So we have to find a way to overcome that gap.
Sure.
And I don't know if the right answer is, and I don't know how possible it is for anatomic pathologists to make the conversion. That would be a tremendous benefit to the healthcare organizations.
Sure, I understand.